My stepmom unalived my sister due to carelessness. Now she's telling me to get over it and my dad is on her side. For some background information, my dad cheated on my mom with my now stepmom. They ultimately got divorced, and my mom ended up moving back to her home country in Europe. My twin sister and I had to stay with our dad because he was more financially well off. I, 17F, live with my dad, stepmom, and younger brothers. Last year in September, my twin sister and I had a volleyball game at school. My dad was usually the one who picked us up from our games and practices, but he couldn't that night. My dad was out of town, so our stepmom had to come pick us up. She arrived an hour late because she took a nap and forgot about us. As soon as we got in the car, she started going on a rant about how we disturbed her nap. Long story short, she ran a stop sign at an intersection, and we got into a horrible accident. Most of that night was a blur, but I remember the last few minutes before the crash. I was hospitalized for weeks, but my twin sister passed away that night. I can't describe how I feel. I lost my best friend, with whom I shared everything with. My sister knew exactly how I felt about everything because we experienced life together. Now, I constantly feel like I'm a zombie. I'm not suicidal, but I often imagine about deleting my own life because living is unbearable without my sister. Last night, my stepmom made a special dinner for her birthday. After the accident, I stopped eating dinner with the rest of my family. It just feels wrong eating without my sister at the table, so I prefer to eat alone in my room. Well, my dad insisted I eat with them downstairs. I protested, but he begged me, so I relented. It started off relatively normal. My stepmom announced to my brothers, 8M and 5M, and me that she was pregnant. My brothers were really happy and asked for the gender of the baby, and my stepmom excitedly said that it was a girl. My brothers kept talking about how they were excited about getting a younger sister. My stepmom mentioned how they could help decorate her nursery. I looked up and asked her which room would be the nursery. She excitedly said that she was going to use my twin sister's room. She mentioned how she had already started removing things from her room in the morning and putting them in the attic. I asked her why she didn't bother telling me before she went ahead and started moving my sister's stuff. It was a big deal to me because, aside from me, no one has been in her room since she passed. Sometimes, when I miss her, I sit in her room to feel closer to her. And some nights, I fall asleep in her room. To that, my stepmom got really defensive. She said that I needed to accept that she was having a baby and needed the empty room. I told her that I understood that she was pregnant, but a heads up would have been nice before she started removing things from my sister's room. She looked at me and said that she didn't need to tell me anything because she was the mother of the household. She said she was doing what was best for the interest of her baby, and she didn't need my negativity. I stayed silent, trying to tune her out, but I snapped when she mentioned how I needed to accept my sister's passing and move on. She said something along the lines of, "Your sister passed away, and you need to accept that. It's hard, but you've got your father, your brothers, and me. Plus, you're getting a new sister with whom you can build an even stronger relationship with. You need to move on because nothing will bring her back." I knew I was getting angry, so I excused myself and left the table. My dad started yelling about how I was being dramatic and needed to come back or I'd be grounded. I continued walking away until my stepmom said, "I don't understand what her problem is." She couldn't even bother to be happy about my pregnancy, but she's angry about me moving things out of an unoccupied bedroom. I turned around and stared at her in disbelief. My stepmom often acts like my twin sister never existed. For example, 2 months ago, I was at Walmart with my dad and stepmom. We were buying a birthday present for my younger brother, and they got into a conversation with an older man. I wasn't paying much attention, but the old man asked my dad how many kids he had. My dad said he had 4 kids, but my stepmom responded saying, "No, we have 3. She does stuff like that all the time, which drives me insane. I started going off on her, and she sat there quietly. I mentioned how she had been the cause of every major traumatic event in my life. I reminded her that she knowingly started sleeping with a married man. She knew he had a wife and kids, but she didn't care. She broke up my family, sending my mom into a deep depression, which ultimately led her to move away. Then I reminded her that she was too preoccupied with ranting about how we disturbed her nap, which ultimately led to a car accident that had me hospitalized for weeks, and I forever lost my twin sister because of her carelessness. I told her that she had no right to just take things out of my sister's room, and I wasn't angry about her new baby, but the fact that she started boxing and removing stuff from my sister's room without even telling me in advance. Then finally, I told her that it was cruel of her to tell me to just move on from my sister. She argued back that the accident happened, basically what's done is done, and that I was living in the past. She said if everything happens for a reason, and that God works in mysterious ways. I straight up asked her if she thought that my sister's unalive could not have been avoided, and she responded, "It was just an unlucky fate." I reminded her that my sister would be alive if she wasn't distracted at the wheel. My stepmom then told me that I make her feel like I wanted her to unalive instead. I just stayed silent, and she kept asking me if she was correct. I turned to walk away, and my stepmom grabbed my arm. I asked her to let go, and she kept saying, "You want me unalive, don't you?" I stayed silent again, but she kept repeating it. I eventually got mad and truthfully told her that my life would have been easier that way. She started crying, and my dad called me heartless. I did apologize a few minutes later, but my dad snapped and asked me to leave my stepmom alone. Since then, my dad has been giving me the silent treatment while my stepmom just avoids me. Update 1. I'm sorry it took so long to get back to everyone, but a lot has happened in the last few months. I wasn't able to read most of the responses to my last post because I went to sleep after posting it. When I woke up, there were several viral TikTok videos about my situation. I didn't know about any of that, but my stepmom's younger sister saw one of the Reddit videos and sent it to their family group chat. And my stepmom saw the video and lost it when she read the comments. She took my phone, laptop, and grounded me right after I woke up. When my dad got home from work, he backed her up. Her entire family was furious, and my dad got yelled at by her parents. They tried to force me to take the post down, but I wouldn't give them my phone's password, so there was little they could do about that. They kept calling me insensitive and disrespectful for bringing strangers into a private matter. As part of my punishment, I wasn't allowed to leave my room. They wouldn't allow me to use my phone or laptop to communicate with my mom at all. They said I could get those privileges back after they deemed that I learned my lesson. A week after everything, my stepmom lost her baby, and she blamed me for it. She said I was causing the entire family too much stress. She just kept yelling at me that it was my fault, and she refused even a glance in my direction. She had a huge argument with my dad about how she wanted me gone, and she ended up staying with her parents for the night. My stepmom even tried to turn my younger brothers against me, and it worked with the older one. My dad tried to convince me to apologize to her, but I didn't even understand what I would be apologizing for. His wife's pregnancy was already high risk due to many other issues. She has lost 3 babies in the past 2 years. I don't know anything about her medical health, but I once overheard her talking on the phone about an abnormality she had that caused her to lose her other babies. And I just fell into a really bad place mentally after that. 4 days after everything happened with my family, I tried to delete myself. I can't describe what I did without this getting flagged, and I don't know how long I was out for, but when I woke up, I started puking everywhere. I was in so much pain and could barely move. I can't remember much, but I think I passed out again, and my little brother found me passed out and covered in vomit. My dad ended up calling 911, and I ended up in the ER. I can't remember everything because it was a blur, but I had to drink activated charcoal at one point. I was hallucinating for hours, and I woke up in a different hospital. I lied to my doctors about everything because I didn't want to get in trouble, but I was still involuntarily sent to a psychiatric hospital anyway. My dad was against it, but I was there for a little over a week. I got into a lot of trouble for attempting to delete myself. My dad didn't speak to me for a week after I came home. While I was gone, my dad read all my journals where I wrote about how much I hated myself, my life, and wished my sister was still alive. He also found out that I was hurting myself by reading it. Eventually, he made me read all the pages out loud to him, my stepmom, and my pastor. My pastor gave me a 3-hour lesson on letting go of anger in the past. They also took away the door to my bedroom because I lost that privilege, and my stepmom made it verbally known that she didn't want me there anymore. My dad told me that he was going to send me to a behavioral camp for troubled kids since I tried to take my life. I still didn't have any of my electronics back, and they refused to leave me alone for extended periods of time. So I had to stay in the living room all day and could only go into my room when it was time for bed. My dad made me keep my door open while I showered, so my stepmom could monitor me. I wasn't allowed to play volleyball this year as a punishment, which really sucked. I just felt so stuck, and I knew that I'd be sent away to one of those awful camps. I've heard so many bad stories about them, so I took my stepmom's iPad in the middle of the night, and I was able to call my best friend. I explained everything to her, she told her parents, and they agreed to help me. I packed a few bags, took a bunch of things that remind me of my sister, and planned to leave 3 nights later. I was even able to get my birth certificate and social security card because I told my stepmom I needed them for a job interview at our church's daycare, and surprisingly, she gave them to me. For 2 nights, my best friend would drive to my house at around 3 a.m. to get some of my things and my sister's old stuff. Then, on the 3rd night, I finally found where my dad was keeping my phone and laptop, so I took them back and left with my best friend that night. I don't want to accidentally incriminate anyone, so I can't say too much about what happened the night I left or who I was with afterwards. However, my dad tried to press charges on several people, but that went nowhere. He gave up on trying to get me to go home because my stepmom was happy with me gone anyway. It's been 3 months since I left, and I'm happy to say that I'm safe. I haven't heard from my dad or his wife in weeks, and from what I've heard, they're not on good terms. I'm currently staying with my mom's cousin, but once I graduate from high school, I plan on moving to Europe to be closer to my mom. I turned 18 today, and I'm happy that I no longer have to legally see my dad again.